I do not. That's my,
Good?
I am.
Alright, cool. I think all of us here can agree that human life is valuable, and that taking a life is something that can be, I guess you could say, unforgivable. But I believe that in some medical cases, it can be something beautiful and merciful, you know? And Grace Pustine, she's a lawyer and the litigation director of the British Columbia the Civil Rights Association. British Columbia is in Canada, for those of you who don't know. It's not Columbia. I know because I looked it up. She talks about this man named Peter. Now, Peter he's a outdoorsman, he's a fit man, he's a family man. And then his life was going well until he was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. So this disease, it weakens the muscles until paralysis sets in. No. Often ALS weakens the muscles that control the breathing. So when the time came, the individual would be gasping for air. Okay, and Peter did not want to go that way. No. I think we all, me personally, I know it's weird to say, but if I do die one of these days, I want to die like out of nowhere. I don't want to know when I die or how I die. Maybe in my sleep, plane crashes my house. I don't know. Like, I just got to be peaceful. You know, that's how I want to die. And Peter, he also wants a peaceful death. You know, but due to laws at the time in 2011 British Columbia, it was illegal for a physician to assist a death with that person. Okay, and as his time came, his body was experiencing a lot of pain that was intolerable, or to the point where he asked his own wife, who he's been married for 42 years, to shoot him or to strangle him with the rope, because he really did not want to experience that pain. And then that's when the time came. Unfortunately, Peter did not, die peacefully. He died exactly how he knew. He was gasping for air. The physician sedated him to the point where he was semi-conscious. And all of this while his wife, Grace, and his two daughters were watching him. And I want to go over a few points why people, or more specifically the American Medical Association, does not agree with this. So what this law is called death with dignity law. Okay, so there's only 6 states in the United States where this is legal. Okay, it's California, lucky me. All right, California, Oregon, Vermont, Hawaii, Colorado, and Pennsylvania. All right. So the reason why the American Medical Association does not agree with this law is that, and I quote, the American Medical Association thinks that it's incompatible with the role of the physician as a healer. So the physician or the doctor is supposed to help them. And then Marcia Angel, she's a professor at Harvard University. So she states in her own words that the Hippocratic Oath, that's what it's called, it focuses more on the physician and not on the patient. Okay, meaning that, in the end, the physician's role is to satisfy the patient. And I believe if the patient is asking for a more tolerable death, I guess you could say, just give it to them. So the Supreme Court in Canada landmarked a decision in February 2015 where it made it legal that any patient could request to be able to die painlessly and not suffer through the pain. Okay. Now let me put that in other words. Okay, I'm not saying that people who just want to die can die. Now, this law only applies to those who are critically ill and who have a disease, who has like no cure and no chance of recovering. Okay? And that's why it's important to think that we should not be held against our own will to suffer what we don't have to. Okay, I would like to think that if I get in an accident or a disease, I would like a choice, you know, like to be able to suffer through it, or to just call it, you know. And as I mentioned, the Supreme Court in Canada and in British Columbia decided that they'll go through with it, and so far it has good results, you know. And that avoids people like Peter from thinking thoughts that, you know, who would ask, for example, you guys, because you guys ask your mom, your spouse, your girlfriend, boyfriend, I don't know, to kill you, like shoot you? No, I mean, I wouldn't. Like, that's something they shouldn't do, okay? And that's why it's important to think that the death with dignity law is really beneficial to those adults who are critically ill, okay? And another point I wanted to touch is DNR, you know? For those of you who don't know what DNR is, it's a do not resuscitate emblem, okay? For example, if someone is choking and they have like a DNR bracelet or necklace, it comes in many forms, that means you can't perform CPR on them because they chose personally, you know, that they want to die naturally, okay? And in that case, people are okay with it. It's legal in the United States to have a DNR emblem. And that's why it gets me thinking, like, if that's legal, why can't death with dignity be legal in all states? You know? And that's why it's important to take a stand, you know, on this position. And that's why I invite you guys, if you guys have time and if you guys are interested, to visit deathwithdignity.org and learn more about this situation. It's an interesting topic, and I know it doesn't apply to us now, but some things could happen in the future that we might want that choice. Okay. I hope each and every one of you took something from this, something good, and thank you for listening.
So I'm sorry, I should have mentioned it before. If I didn't, Juan's supposed to do the written evaluation. Ruben is supposed to do the oral evaluation. Ruben, you here? Okay. You don't have to worry about that. Okay. I think the subject's introduced in kind of a philosophical way, and you have a story to illustrate the point that you're talking about. This ALS patient in Canada, you kind of describe their scenario and situation, and that pulls us in emotionally. I don't think that you set up a structure for the presentation, so you need to do a little bit more to tell us what it's not that complicated to say, you know, here's the problem. We have a lot of people who face this issue, and it's against the law for them to get assistance from their doctors in order to cope, to deal with these kinds of problems. And let me address the moral issues that are also based on it. And then we kind of know where you're headed. As it is, it really you spend 3 minutes telling us this story, and I know what the point of the story is and where you're going, but it does take you a while to get through it. And I'm not exactly sure how it's all going to proceed. I just know what the end point is going to be. So, although eventually I do know what your end goal is, the journey that you're going to take us through is not as clear. The AMA issue comes up, and I think that there's an important point here. If the medical association is opposed to this particular activity, and the states are allowing it, or the court in Canada is allowing it, then there's going to be some conflict that's going on here. How is that conflict going to be resolved, and why is it that the AMA should be the one that caves in on this? You've got one argument here that says, one person says, hey, well, the Hippocratic Oath is just focusing on the physician rather than the patient. I'm not exactly sure why that seems like that's the case to the person that you quoted, and since the person taking the oath is the physician, why shouldn't it apply to the doctor more than the patient? If there's an inconsistency in the goals that the oath has in relationship to the patient, I think that should be the focus of your argument. And you kind of just dismiss that, and I think that there are value issues here that probably have to be dealt with and come to grips with. I did appreciate that you had some factual data about the number of states that have this. You had the story that you used as an illustration. You had a couple of quotes as you went along, so there is some content in the presentation. It's not merely just, here's my opinion and here's how it should work. You offer more than that. I do think you have some negative visualizations that you use to motivate us also, so there is some emotional content to what you're talking about as well. The whole thing about DNR seems to come out of nowhere, and if it had been part of your organizational structure, it might make more sense about how it's included. Or, for instance, if it's a counterpoint and you're saying one of the ways that we address these issues is through this, and that is perfectly acceptable, and let me explain to you why it's inconsistent. The one thing is unacceptable and this is acceptable, then it would maybe make a little bit more sense. As it was, it just felt like a sharp left turn, and then we were on a separate path, and I don't think that helped your presentation very much. Now, the delivery aspects you do a very good job of. You talk to us, you're enthusiastic, you're engaged, there's good eye contact. I think you're solid there. So it just, and what you had in the speech is not bad material. I just think it needs to be supplemented a little bit more, and it definitely needs to be organized more. All right, thank you.